All right. So over the weekend, we got the missile launches, and this is there's so much wrong with all of this. One, thrilled that the attacks were a success. Thrilled that we didn't lose anybody. Not going to cry any tears for Assad because Assad sucks. I think everybody understands that Assad sucks. The big question is, what is better for the world and for Syria at this point in time? Assad or the likely alternative? And I am on the side that Assad is probably the best option. Other than full-scale invasion, taking over the country and dealing with an insurgency, again, like we've already done. And I don't, frankly, find any excitement or joy in that prospect. Okay, I don't think most other people will either. Now, I will say that we learned a couple of things over the weekend that we had not known. I had told you before, the only person in the Trump administration that I saw who was actively saying, we still don't know that Assad did this, was General Mattis. And I saw a bunch of people as this attack was happening saying, Trump didn't make this decision, Mattis did. And I am calling bull on that. We learned over the weekend that Mattis actually stopped 2 operations because he was not convinced. So eventually, somebody either convinced him or he acquiesced, and we launched the attacks. Now, I have full faith and trust in Mattis that if he does anything, it's going to be done right. And if we are going to get ourselves into a military situation with Syria, I am thrilled that Mattis is at the helm of that, okay, compared to what we have had in the past. And I honestly, I cannot express to you the comfort that that gives me. So while I am in general opposed to getting involved in this, not because I think Assad's a great guy. I saw a couple of idiots posting that garbage over the weekend, too. If you're opposed to this, you think Assad is such a nice person. It has nothing to do with that. Don't be stupid. But do we really want to see what happened in Iraq happen? And again, Iraq only happened that way because of 2 things. One, Bush failed to heed the advice of an insurgency. And then you had Obama ignoring the advice of literally everybody and cutting and running before the Iraqis were ready, and then not helping them when they asked for help. That's why Iraq even turned into a mess. Iraq could have been in a very easy cakewalk situation that was just bungled. It just was. Then you had Libya. Okay, that's a disaster. And of course, do we really want what happened in Libya to happen in Syria? That becomes the big question. So you've got terrorists on both sides. You've got Hezbollah supporting Assad. You've got ISIS and Al-Qaeda opposing Assad. Assad sucks, but he's not a jihadist. And I've tried to explain this as best as I can in the plainest terms that I can to everybody out there. I would rather deal with a bad guy who is not expansionist and is not a jihadist than a jihadist regime. I would just rather deal with that, okay? Is it ideal for his people? Nope. Is it ideal in general? Nope. Got news for you. The world is not ideal. And as you know, crappy as Assad can be, Assad was not even considered on a list of tyrants before this whole thing happened. He was considered unkind. People treated him with proper skepticism, but he wasn't doing the types of things that we saw Saddam doing at the scale that Saddam was doing. Yeah, a smaller scale, sure, but and so it just, okay. So there was a rift that was along religious ideology that happened, and a civil war broke out. Okay, a bunch of innocent people get caught in the middle of that, unfortunately. But from my perspective, I'm looking at this and I just go, all right, Hezbollah really sucks, and Hezbollah's back in Assad. By the way, we're hearing that Hezbollah is mobilized. I'm hearing, I should say, not we. I am hearing that Hezbollah is mobilizing for my people in Israel. And when Hezbollah mobilizes, Hamas tends to mobilize too. And with everything that's been happening in Gaza with Hamas, and now you've got Hezbollah with who is actively fighting in Syria and everything else. Hezbollah and Hamas love to tag team Israel because they're on opposite sides. They like to divide Israel's forces. So if Hezbollah is taking this opportunity to make another move on Israel, keep an eye on that. when I look at what we did and why we did it, there are two things that I notice. One, when you draw a red line in the sand, you have to adhere to the red line. Okay, you have to. And when we tell somebody you're not going to use chemical weapons or we're going to nail you, we have to back that up. I agree with that premise 100%. Whether that red line should have been drawn, that becomes another debate entirely. My biggest thing on this was I just wanted confirmation that it was actually Assad and not the terrorists themselves who did it. Now, you have to understand something. This city that was allegedly gassed is run by one of the insurgent groups there, which is a jihadist Islamic radical group, which did, in fact, and they have admitted it, used chemical weapons on the Kurds. So the group that says they were gassed by Assad is in possession of chemical weapons and has used them. So forgive my skepticism that they may have done it themselves in order to get, 100 missiles launched at their enemy, which is exactly what happened. And that's all I kept trying to get people to do is take a step back. Well, we can't allow somebody to use chemical weapons over there. Okay. Why do we not get this butthurt and uppity when the other side does it? Because the other side has used chemical weapons on civilians and Assad's forces far more than Assad's even been accused of using it on them. And nobody says a thing in the Western world. Nothing. Nobody says jack squat. So are we going to launch missiles like this every time the terrorists use chemical weapons on Assad's forces and civilians, or no? Now, if we're not, and we haven't, I am forced to conclude that we are choosing sides. And at this point in time, we are choosing the side of Al-Qaeda and ISIS versus Assad and Hezbollah. Forgive me if that kind of irks me a little bit. So now, we launched 105 missiles. By the way, what's up with all the blue checkmark people in the media saying that, because Syria was out there. Oh, yeah, we shot down like 37 of them. Does anybody believe that they shot down 37 Tomahawks? No. But I see a bunch of blue checkmark people out there in our press going, reports show that that the Syrians have shot down 37 of our missiles. Yeah, right. You ran with that? You honestly believe that? So you got American media, verified social media accounts, literally spreading Syrian propaganda through this whole thing. President today says not one of our missiles was shot down. I don't know which one's true. Okay, no idea. I know that we had a few targets. We hit every single one of them, and then the president went out there and said we have crippled their chemical weapons capability. I got news for you. We didn't. What do you mean? Because we're talking about organophosphates here, which I have been the only person in the country telling you in my entire radio career. Nobody else has told you this. Organophosphates, which are, again, a pesticide, which is considered a dual-use chemical. That's how you make sarin. You can whip up sarin in a relatively inscientific, unclean environment, folks. It is not that difficult to manufacture. So, yeah, you might have taken out some research facilities. You might have taken out their manufacturing facilities. I got news for you. They can make this stuff in a garage. Okay, so, no, you haven't really seriously limited anything. Did you set them back a little bit? Sure. Is that good? Yes. Running around saying, oh, we've destroyed their chemical weapons ability is just dumb, because it's not true. So now, imagine my surprise when I open up the news today and I see this most amazing headline that nobody's really focusing on today, which seems to, confirm everything that I've said and call into question the stupid missile strike anyway. Oh, you haven't heard about this? Tim, you haven't heard about this headline? No. Oh, I'm going to tell you about it next. News Talk 95.3, Michiana's news channel.
Casey Hendrickson, News Talk 95.3, Michiana's news channel.
Your breaking news and weather station.
And good afternoon. Thank you for tuning in. News Talk 95.3, Michiana's news channel. I'm your host, Casey Hendrickson. I know I'm shattering a bunch of your narratives right now. I know. It's all right. It's cool. Hey, traffic is driven by R&B Car Company, locations in South Bend and Warsaw. R&B Car Company are your used car experts. So we got the missile strikes over the weekend, right, on Syria. I've already explained once again why I think picking sides in Syria is a bad idea. And regardless, we did what we did, okay? Now, we did what we did because we know that it was Assad's regime that used the chemical weapons, right, Producer Tim? In spite of the fact that I kept telling people, just wait until you have verification. That's all I'm asking. Just wait until you have verification. Because these groups also, in fact, the group that runs the town of Douma, which is the one that was hit. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Douma, whatever it is. The group that runs that city, they possess chemical weapons themselves, and they have used them on the Kurds. The Kurds, by the way, are the only people worth fighting for over there as far as military combatants. They're the only good guys. I mean, they're it. And, of course, we don't help them. Very interesting that we will arm al-Qaeda loyalists and jihadists and things like that, but we won't help the Kurds, who have done absolutely nothing to anybody but try to defend themselves. So anyway, I am going to read for you the responses of Indiana representatives on this, okay? And trust me, this is extremely important to the headline that I'm going to read for you in just a couple of seconds, so just pay attention to this. U.S. Representative Jackie Walorski on the missile strikes. U.S. military action alongside our allies is a necessary and decisive response to the Assad regime's repeated use of chemical weapons against its own people. Such atrocities will not be tolerated. I am praying for our brave men and women in uniform. Okay, so Representative Walorski gives positive confirmation that it was Assad's regime that used the chemical weapons in Douma. Joe Donnelly. The recent chemical weapons attack was the latest in a series of barbaric actions by the Assad regime. I support tonight's international military response, which demonstrates that there are consequences for using chemical weapons on innocent civilians. There just never is for the terrorists, okay? So Senator Donnelly gave positive affirmation that we know it was Assad's regime, Producer Tim. Senator Todd Young, it is in America's national security interest to deter the use of chemical weapons, again, only when it's done by Assad, not by the terrorists. And the international community must not look the other way as Assad continues to murder his own people. So, Senator Young gave positive affirmation that the chemical attack was from the Assad regime. Then you have Representative Jim Banks. Tonight, President Trump laid out clearly why the United States must respond to the repeated use of horrific chemical weapons by the Assad regime. I support the president's decision, yada, yada, yada. So, Representative Banks gave positive affirmation that we know it was Assad's regime. Okay, missiles were launched on Saturday, right? Yeah. Missiles were launched on Saturday. So imagine my eyeballs when I opened up the news today. U.S. accuses Russia of tampering with Syrian poison gas site and blocking inspectors. Huh? Wait a minute. Hold on a second. The United States has accused Russia of tampering with evidence at the site of the brutal chemical attack, which killed more than 70 in Douma, Syria. It also said that Russia is blocking chemical inspectors from probing the area. And then, of course, Moscow blamed the retaliatory airstrikes as why. The inspectors arrived in Syria on Saturday. We launched the missiles on Saturday, though. And we only launched the missiles because we knew, beyond the shadow of a doubt, Producer Tim, that it was Assad. So we launched the missiles on Saturday, but our inspectors didn't even get there until Saturday, and now they're claiming that they can't even inspect the site because the Russians are blocking access to the site. So the inspectors are all over the news. And you've got Theresa May, you've got the U.S., you've got France, we got everybody out there all over the news going, the Russians aren't letting us gather evidence of if a chemical weapon was used and who used it and what it was. Wait, what the heck? Why did you launch missile strikes if you're admitting that you have no idea who the heck did it? That was my one complaint about this entire thing. Two complaints. One, didn't know who positively did it. And two, why are we picking one terrorist side over the other? We're not picking terrorist sides, Producer Tim. We're fighting for the innocent civilians caught in between. Uh-huh. Inspectors arrived in Syria on Saturday to examine whether chemical weapons were used in Douma in April and what kind. Okay. There's reliable intelligence to support claims that Syria was behind the attack. We don't know for sure, the inspector said. Cool. So glad that everybody in our congressional delegation from the great state of Indiana gave positive affirmation that we know it was Assad, while the inspectors go, the Russians won't even let us in the site to figure out what's going on. Just so you know, the people who are tasked with figuring all of this out are admitting they have no idea if Assad did it. Just want you to know that, while everybody else, the politicians, are telling you, we know for sure it was Assad, but the people who are actually on the ground go, we still don't even know what chemical weapon was used or by who. Just so you know. Got more coming up. 95.3 MNC.
Mid-States Construction, one of the nation's leading authorized builders of new core building systems. On News Talk 95.3, Michiana's news channel, your breaking news and weather station. Casey Hendrickson.
And good afternoon. Thank you for tuning in. News Talk 95.3, Michiana's news channel. I'm your host, Casey Hendrickson. Phone number 574-2595, 95.3. That is 2595-953. You can also send a text message to 45364. Please put MNC at the beginning of that message. Again, want to thank our sponsors, Second Amendment Arms and Range, located in New Carlisle. 10 dedicated shooting lanes. They are indoors, rifle and pistol. And yes, they do have rentals. Mention me, get half off your range time. Go to secondamendmentarms.net. All right. Yes, we will get to the Starbucks thing today. People are asking me about that via text message. Somebody did say, is this why Congress has the power to make war, so that way the process is a little bit more slower to verify information? Yes. It also is, to prevent tyrannical stuff. As far as the legal specifics of whether or not the president had the authority to launch the attack, I believe he did, but I don't know concretely yet. I've got to go through and I got to look at it. I'm pretty sure that he has the ability to launch this attack without without notifying Congress. However, it typically is prolonged operations where you need to notify Congress. And frequently when you do launch a strike, if it is of an imminent sort of a scenario, which you could argue that this was not, then he typically has, I think, within 24 hours to notify Congress after the attack. So I believe he has the authority to do this. I don't believe there's a constitutional issue with him launching the attack. The question is whether or not it was just the wisest thing in the world to do. That becomes the question. And there's, various theories as to why we did this. Most people understand that it's not to protect innocent civilians. There's something else. Some people believe that's a military-industrial complex. Other people believe other things. But, yeah, I think you're kidding yourself if you think that this is just purely about protecting innocent Syrians, because if that were the case, then we would ultimately be much more concerned anytime the terrorist groups over there use chemical weapons, and they use it far more than Assad's been accused of using them. So that becomes an issue. Now, is somebody's asking me about the Russian bloc? Why would the Russians be opposing us if Assad's not guilty? This is a great question. Assad might very well be guilty. I've always said that. Might very well be guilty. And I think that if he is guilty, it's, if we wanted to act, okay, that's fine. All I wanted was verification before it happened. Now France is going out there and saying, oh, we've convinced Trump to stay in Syria long term. White House has kind of rebuffed that. I mean, who knows? It's just, you're dealing with two sides that are enemies, and picking one over the other. If you are going to pick one of your enemies over the other enemy, you pick the enemy that is the least risk to you, and that would be Assad. So by not picking Assad, I believe it is a strategic mistake. Now, ultimately, time will tell. And like I said, in Mattis, we trust. And I have more faith in Mattis than I have had in any military commander going back a very, very long time. So if Mattis is calling this thing, even if it's the wrong decision, Mattis will make it right in one way, shape, or form. So there's that.